There are some stories that grip the world not because they're sensational, but because they feel personal, because they could happen to someone's mother, grandmother, or neighbor. This is one of those stories. On the night of January 31st, 2026, 84-year-old Nancy Guthrie was dropped off at her home in Tucson, Arizona after spending time with family. The next morning, she was nowhere to be found. No note, no sign, no clear explanation. Her disappearance triggered an immediate and intense investigation by local law enforcement, the Pima County Sheriff's Department, and the FBI, not just because she was missing, but because the circumstances suggested something deeply alarming. Investigators quickly found evidence that suggested Nancy did not leave of her own accord. Blood matching her DNA was discovered near the porch of her home, showed in surveillance footage captured a masked individual approaching her front door during the early morning hours. Those early hours became the foundation of an intense search and unanswered questions. Who was this masked figure? Where did Nancy go? And crucially, why? As the search entered its third week, tens of thousands of public tips poured in. Law enforcement was combing through surveillance footage, canvassing neighborhoods, and following every lead. One of the key pieces of evidence was a pair of gloves discovered roughly 2 miles from her home. These gloves appeared to match ones worn by the person in the doorbell camera video, potentially connecting them to the disappearance. So investigators hoped the DNA extracted from those gloves would be the breakthrough they needed. A match in the National CODIS database that could identify the person seen on camera. But when the results came back, there were no matches, not anywhere in the national system, and not even matching DNA found elsewhere at the scene. This was not the conclusive breakthrough the public and law enforcement had hoped for, but it was not a dead end either. Instead, it marked a turning point in the investigation, where traditional forensic leads were joined by more advanced scientific methods like genetic genealogy, which can trace unknown DNA to potential family lines. And all this is happening against the backdrop of a family pleading for answers, the community holding its breath, and a missing woman who has become the focus of a nationwide search. Before we go further into what these DNA results mean and what investigators are doing next, let me ask you, where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments. And if you haven't already, hit like, subscribe, and ring the bell for updates on this ongoing case. This isn't just another story. It's a mystery that could be solved with the next breakthrough. When investigators confirmed that DNA had been recovered in the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie, many believed the waiting was finally over. In modern crime investigations, DNA is supposed to end the guessing. It's supposed to expose the truth, strip away the mystery, and point directly to the person responsible. But in this case, the DNA didn't bring answers. It brought silence. Where the biological material was recovered from a glove found miles away from Nancy Guthrie's home. An object investigators believe may be connected to the masked figure seen approaching her front door in the early morning hours. That glove wasn't just discarded clothing. It was a possible connection between a person and a disappearance that left behind fear, confusion, and blood at the scene. For detectives, the glove represented hope. One clean DNA profile could mean a name, a face, a knock on a door. They sent the sample to be run through CODIS, the national DNA database that has identified countless criminals before, and then they waited. When the results came back, there was no match. No criminal record, no previous arrest, no known offender. The DNA did not match anything in CODIS. It didn't even match other DNA recovered from Nancy's property. Whoever left it behind had managed to move through the crime without leaving a familiar forensic footprint, as if they had never existed in the system at all. That result changed the tone of the investigation instantly, because no match doesn't mean innocent. It means unknown. It means whoever was there may have never been caught before, never processed, never entered into a database. And that possibility is far more unsettling than a known criminal. It suggests someone who blends in, someone ordinary, someone who could walk past neighbors, cameras, and police without raising suspicion. At that point, investigators had to confront a darker reality, that the person connected to Nancy Guthrie's disappearance may still be out there, living a normal life, untouched by the investigation, watching from a distance. With traditional forensic paths exhausted, law enforcement turned to one of the most invasive and controversial tools available, genetic genealogy. This isn't fast science, it's patient, methodical, and relentless. Genetic genealogy doesn't look for the person, it looks for their bloodline. It searches public DNA databases for distant relatives who unknowingly shared pieces of their genetic code. From there, family trees are built, branch by branch, name by name, generation by generation. Entire lives reconstructed on paper, all to narrow down one unknown individual. It's a process that has solved cold cases decades old, but it also takes time, and time is something this case does not feel like it has. While genealogists work quietly behind the scenes, our detectives are re-examining every moment surrounding Nancy's disappearance with a heavier sense of urgency. The surveillance footage no longer feels abstract. The masked figure no longer feels distant. That person is now tied to DNA, real physical proof that someone was there. And with that realization comes a haunting question. If the DNA belongs to the person on that footage, where are they now? Investigators are also revisiting Nancy's routines with a colder eye. Who knew when she would be home? Who knew she lived alone? Who knew her movements well enough to approach her door under the cover of darkness? This no longer looks like chance. Law enforcement has been clear that the family is not considered suspects, but that clarity only sharpens the focus elsewhere, toward the unknown individual who left behind that glove and vanished into the night. What makes this phase of the case especially disturbing is that it exists in a shadowed space. There is evidence but no identity. There is DNA but no name. There is proof that someone was there, but no proof yet of where they went. And in that silence, the case grows heavier, because every day without answers allows the unknown to remain unknown. And every day without answers deepens the fear that someone capable of this act may never have been held accountable. The DNA didn't solve the case. It made it darker. Before we move into what investigators are doing right now and how this case could still break open, take a moment to like this video, subscribe to Cold Trail Crimes, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Because this story isn't over, and the next development could be the one that finally pulls someone out of the shadows.
Investigators say they've received 4,000 calls in just one 24-hour period since they released surveillance footage of a masked and armed person at Nancy Guthrie's door the night she went missing. As they work through potential leads, agents were seen searching the area surrounding her home on foot Wednesday. There are also reports of another ransom note and potential key pieces of evidence. Bradley Blackburn joins us now with more updates on this case. Bradley, good morning.
Errol, good morning. CBS News has learned that during that search you mentioned, investigators discovered a pair of black gloves more than a mile from Nancy Guthrie's home. It is far from certain at this point whether they're connected to the case, but they do appear similar to gloves worn by that masked person in the doorbell video. There is intense scrutiny on these images now, looking for anything to identify them. FBI search teams were seen walking roadways around Tucson and the Catalina foothills, scouring for clues in the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie. A source close to the investigation confirms to CBS News 2 black gloves were recovered from the search and sent for DNA testing. The New York Post reports that authorities had found a black glove near the crime scene that's similar to ones worn by the masked individual in security camera images from the night the 84-year-old disappeared.
There are a cascade, like a waterfall of leads that come directly from that video.
Retired FBI Special Agent Lance Lysing says the video images could be the key to helping investigators break the case.
We're going to hope that a family member, a friend, somebody who knows that person is going to report them. That's the tip you need.
The Pima County Sheriff's Department says thousands of new tips have been received since the footage was released. A neighbor says authorities also questioned her about her home surveillance cameras, particularly from the night Guthrie disappeared.
They did ask specifically for the 31st of January and the morning of the 1st of February. And then they wanted to know if we saw anything suspicious on our cameras.
Meanwhile, TMZ says it received another unverified ransom note Wednesday related to the case, though this time the sender is someone claiming to offer information on an alleged kidnapper. And as investigators conduct their physical search near the Guthrie home, there is almost certainly a digital forensic search happening into that doorbell camera video. Experts say analysts are likely using software, possibly even artificial intelligence, to try to identify facial features through the ski mask that the person was wearing. And investigators are still asking the public for more tips. The FBI Errol is offering a $50,000 reward.
All right. Important updates there. Bradley, thank you.
As the DNA analysis continues behind closed doors, the search for Nancy Guthrie has entered its most unsettling phase, the part where answers feel close, but danger still feels present. This is the stage of an investigation where law enforcement stops asking what happened and starts asking who is still out there. Search efforts have not slowed. If anything, they've become more deliberate, less visible. Patrols expand quietly. Tips are reevaluated. Surveillance footage that once seemed insignificant is now replayed frame by frame. Every vehicle, every shadow, every person who passed through that neighborhood in the hours surrounding Nancy's disappearance is being reconsidered. Because when DNA exists without a name, investigators have to assume one thing. The person responsible may be watching the investigation unfold. That possibility changes everything. The masked figure captured on camera approaching Nancy's front door is no longer just a silhouette. That image now carries weight. It represents intent, timing, and knowledge. Whoever that person was didn't wander there by accident. They approached a specific home at a specific hour when they believed someone would be vulnerable. That detail has led investigators to quietly explore darker possibilities. Was this a burglary gone wrong? Or was Nancy targeted? Did someone believe she had something worth taking? Or did someone believe she was alone and defenseless? Law enforcement has been careful with their words, but sources close to the investigation suggest that the scene itself tells a troubling story. Blood was found, not enough to immediately explain what happened, but enough to confirm that something violent may have occurred. Enough to confirm that Nancy did not simply walk away. That realization hangs over the case like a shadow. And as days pass without answers, the urgency intensifies. Every missing person case carries a clock. Not an official one, but a psychological one. The longer someone remains unaccounted for, the heavier the questions become. The silence becomes louder. The stakes become unbearable. Behind the scenes, detectives are now cross-referencing the DNA effort with behavioral analysis. They're asking who fits the profile of someone capable of this kind of act. Someone comfortable operating in darkness. Someone confident enough to approach a home while cameras were active. Someone who left behind evidence, but not enough to be easily identified. And then there's the most disturbing question of all. What if this person has done this before? A lack of CODIS match doesn't mean a lack of history. It only means a lack of records. Investigators are now looking beyond known offenders, beyond obvious suspects, and into the uncomfortable territory of the unknown. People who have never been caught, never been charged, never been flagged. People who blend in. At the same time, the community remains on edge. Neighbors double-check locks. Porch lights stay on longer. Ordinary routines feel different now. Because this case shattered the illusion of safety in a quiet area. If it could happen here, it could happen anywhere. And somewhere in all of this is a family waiting. Waiting for news, waiting for answers, waiting for a phone call that could change everything, for better or for worse. Law enforcement has emphasized that this investigation is active, evolving, and far from over. But the truth is, this is the most dangerous part of the story. The part where the person connected to the DNA may still be free, still unknown, and still unaccounted for. And until that changes, the case remains open. Before we move into the final section, where we break down what could happen next, what investigators are hoping for, and what this DNA may eventually reveal, take a moment to like this video, subscribe to Cold Trail Crimes, and tell me where you're watching from, because this case is unfolding in real time, and the next update may not come quietly. With DNA in hand but no name attached, the investigation into Nancy stands at a precarious point, caught between hope and fear. Investigators now face the challenge of turning unknown DNA into an identity, a process that could take months, but could also finally bring answers. Genetic genealogy is the tool they're relying on. By tracing distant relatives through public DNA databases, experts hope to reconstruct family trees that might point to the person responsible. It's painstaking work, but in past cases, this method has identified suspects decades after the crime. Here it may finally shine a light on someone who has stayed in the shadows, someone who thought they could remain invisible. Meanwhile, if the search continues in real time, every tip, every lead, every piece of surveillance is being re-examined through the lens of the DNA results. Investigators know that the longer someone remains unidentified, the greater the risk that evidence will grow cold, and the longer the family waits for answers. For Nancy's family, the uncertainty is unbearable. Every passing day without clarity deepens the fear and anguish. But law enforcement remains committed. Every avenue is being explored, every expert consulted, every possible lead chased. Because in cases like this, one breakthrough, one new piece of information can change everything in an instant. As we follow this case here on Cold Trail Crimes, it's important to remember the stakes. A missing woman, a community on edge, and the unknown person who may still be out there. Sheer DNA has opened a door, but what lies on the other side remains hidden, for now. If you want to stay updated as this story unfolds, make sure to like, subscribe, and ring the notification bell. Because this case is far from over, and the next development could come suddenly, changing everything.